Hi. Got a tape I want to play.
Stop playing with him, Riot.
And I'm bad like the Barbie. I'm a doll, but I still wanna party. Pink felt like I'm ready to bend. I'm a 10, so I pull in a 10. Like Debbie, Stacy, Vicky. All of the Barbies is pretty. All of the Barbies is bad. It girls, and we ain't playing tag.
2023 was another stacked year at the movies, and I think the big theme this year was variety. So many different films came out this year, and a lot of them found an audience and success. In a year where a lot of superhero movies failed, video game movies really took over, with Gran Turismo in particular being way better than its trailers would have you believe.
I would dust him in a lap.
And while it's not necessarily a video game, the D&D film ended up being really funny, along with a plethora of other studio comedies, with my personal standouts being Joyride, Theater Camp, No Hard Feelings, and especially The Blackening, which came along with a lot of great original horror films like Thanksgiving, Talk to Me, and the wildly overlooked Sick. They Cloned Tyrone also went vastly overlooked, probably because Netflix decided to release it Barbenheimer weekend with almost no marketing. Elemental also went pretty overlooked as far as Pixar goes, along with its incredible score by Thomas Newman. I also really love Mutant Mayhem and its amazing voice cast. I was shocked by how much I liked the Little Mermaid remake, which is largely thanks to Halle Bailey and Jonah Hauer-King. Michael B. Jordan made a spectacular directorial debut with Creed 3, and Bits Bazawule has entered my radar as a director to watch after his exceptional work on The Color Purple. Charles Melton blew me away in May December, and who didn't love Jason Momoa in Fast X?
Here we go.
Concert movies had a huge presence this year thanks to Taylor Swift and Beyonce, but my personal favorite was the Stop Making Sense remaster courtesy of A24 and Talking Heads. And finally, while Beau is Afraid wasn't exactly my cup of tea, it makes me so happy that a movie that creative and ambitious was even made, and who knows, maybe with an eventual rewatch it could make its way onto the list. But none of these films on my list or not on my list would exist without the writers and actors behind them, who both had historic labor strikes and got new deals that they all rightfully deserve. So without any further ado, here's my top 23 films of 2023.
Hey, yeah, I wanna shoot, baby.
Films like Anyone But You are proving that rom-coms are still in high demand, especially in theaters, and it's such a shame that Disney and Searchlight Pictures just dumped this beautiful and hilarious movie on Hulu with no fanfare. Rye Lane is beautifully shot, absolutely hilarious, and showcases two movie stars in the making with David Johnson and Vivian Oprah. It also has a ton of cutaway gags for all my Family Guy fans. Ever since The Social Network released in 2010, filmmakers and studios have tried to copy what David Fincher, Aaron Sorkin, and the rest of the crew did with the Facebook story by making countless corporate biopics. And we just got so many this year. Tetris movies, Beanie Babies, Pinball movie, Cheetos, and an Air Jordan movie, which that one was pretty good, but none of those compare to Matt Johnson's Blackberry. Johnson understands that this kind of movie already exists in spades, and he knew he had to shake things up. One of the ways Blackberry does this is its structure. Unlike most of these films, the product ultimately fails, which turns the latter half of this film into a tense, ticking time bomb that leads to a fantastic conclusion. He also adds a lot of comedy throughout, and it never distracts from the drama or the tension. Wes Anderson made his most Wes Anderson film yet, and for a lot, that is a big turnoff, but I personally loved it. Asteroid City is his most densely layered film he's made so far, and maybe his most visually stunning. It's a lot to unpack, and because of that, I have a feeling that with more rewatches and time, it could climb up even higher on this list.
Oh. Door City over here.
If Makoto Shinkai is going to do anything, it's make a mystifying animated adventure with gorgeous visuals and amazing characters, and that's exactly what happened here. And with Suzume, he has made his most relatable protagonist yet with a dude with 3 legs.
You can kiss me!
Okay, so imagine if instead of 2 bad movies and 1 banger, the Star Wars prequels was actually just 1 banger that has Rachel Zegler singing bluegrass tunes. Then you would get the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I feel bad that my main takeaway from a movie as rich, layered, and gripping as this one is just how good of an actor the dog is. Dave Bautista, Jonathan Groff, and Ben Aldridge give what might be the most underrated performances of the entire year here, and it's so clear that M. Night is having a blast with the camera. Nothing is better than a one-room thriller that is actually good. This might be the only monster movie in the universe where I wanted to cut to the human characters. If they made a sequel with the same leads and no Godzilla, I wouldn't complain for a second.
Open up now.
If you look up the definition of all killer, no filler, you'll get a picture of Evil Dead Rise. It's such a fantastic evolution of the series and the most demented fun I've had all year. The elevator scene is top tier. On a completely different note, Past Lives will probably end up as the definitive romance of the 2020s, a film that spans a decade like When Harry Met Sally or the Before trilogy, but meets the devastation of In the Mood for Love. A true masterwork that will definitely grow on me even more with rewatches. I can't believe this is Celine Song's first film, such a confident debut.
Kittredge, you've never seen me very upset.
I think Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 had impossible odds stacked against it. It had to be the sequel to the greatest action film of all time following Mission Impossible Fallout. It was the first Tom Cruise film to release after the biggest hit of his career, and it released a week before the biggest movie-going event in years. All of those expectations kind of clouded just how good this movie really is. To be fair, after the first watch, I was slightly disappointed because it wasn't Fallout, but after watching it again, I realized that it not being Fallout was actually a strength. McQuarrie really shifts gears here stylistically, harkening back to what Brian De Palma did with the original film and taking tons of inspiration from classics like Buster Keaton's The General. The film's classic DNA with its modern filmmaking is what makes this one stand out so much. Also, this is the only Mission Impossible film with Shea Wiggum and Charles Parnell, which I really could have just said that. You'd understand why it's this high.
Maybe I should buy a gun. Okay, what? Don't buy a gun. Nobody said buy a gun.
It's going to be a real shame when the Mean Girls remake ends up making a bunch of money and people are going to keep saying Hollywood is out of ideas and all they make is sequels and remakes, but I know none of those people complaining went and saw Bottoms earlier this year. Emma Seligman really made the definitive Gen Z high school film. It has such a talented cast, a bonkers world, and just some of the funniest lines of the entire year.
Is this about the time I said Amelia Earhart was a fake hero? Because it's true. Many a guys fly planes without crashing, but you never hear about them. And then it's like, oh, it's so hard to be a girl. We make less money. We have to lose our last name.
Almost everything everyone says is comedic gold and super quotable. I hope everyone in this cast becomes a star, and I hope more people watch this absolute riot. Without any sort of doubt, Barbie is the film of the year. It's clearly the biggest both financially and culturally and is well on its way to become a classic. Now, making $1 billion doesn't make you a classic film automatically, because if that was the case, then Jurassic World Dominion and the 2019 Aladdin would have to be remembered. What makes Barbie so classic is, much like Dead Reckoning, it's a film made with the DNA of classic cinema. If you told me that a Barbie movie would draw heavy inspiration from the works of Jacques Demy, I wouldn't have believed you, but this is Greta Gerwig we're talking about here. She infused this film with the likes of the Umbrellas of Cherbourg, Singing in the Rain, The Truman Show, The Philadelphia Story, Playtime, and of course the opening scene is an homage to 2001: A Space Odyssey. Gerwig pulls from all of these sources while still maintaining her own voice and style at the forefronts of a blockbuster based on a toy. Barbie was a hit and will become a classic not because of an IP, but because of the visionary filmmaking behind it, and I'm just mad that I couldn't fit this into my top 10, but that's just how good 2023 has been for film. Despite winning Best Actress at the Venice Film Festival, Kaylee Spaney's performance as Priscilla Presley is going massively overlooked this award season and just overlooked in general. Yes, Jacob Elordi is great, but Spaney is doing the true masterwork here, holding this film on her own. The way she believably plays Priscilla at 14 to a full-grown adult is such a natural progression, which is also helped by the incredible hair and makeup team. Sarah Flack's expert editing makes this film fly by, and Sofia Coppola's direction is so soft and careful, which makes the eventual devastation have that much more of an impact.
This hit goes out to you, Mr. Wick.
John Wick Chapter 4 can be an exhausting film to watch because in its opening 10 to 20 minutes you get an action set piece that would act as the grand finale for most movies, and it's not like this film is peaking early. No, it's just getting started. The next 2.5 hours is seeing Chad Stahelski and his team constantly topping themselves by showing you the coolest thing you've ever seen, and then saying, no, here's the coolest thing you've ever seen, and then they bring in Donnie Yen. Nowadays, it feels like so many films are trying to be the new Star Wars, the big new space epic that will inspire the new generation of filmmakers and, more importantly, make tons of money. Well, for my money, Guardians of the Galaxy is this generation Star Wars. For kids in 1977, the moment that got so many people into film was this. But for audiences in 2014, including myself, it was this. Now all James Gunn had to do was find his own version of this, and in my opinion, he completely surpasses it with this. This is a series built on needle drops, and it saved its best one for last. A perfect send-off to this batch of assholes that concludes their stories perfectly. I couldn't have asked for anything better.
Heard what? Brian, don't!
Speaking of send-offs that might not actually be send-offs, Hayao Miyazaki's 7th last film is really something special. I'm a huge fan of his work. His filmography is so good that every time I watch one of his films, it becomes my favorite Miyazaki film until I watch another one. So I was very surprised when it took me a minute to fall in love with The Boy and the Heron. This was my most anticipated film of the year, and since I love Miyazaki so much, I thought I knew I was getting myself into. Instead, I was overwhelmed and left dumbfounded by Miyazaki's most dense and layered film yet. I thought this would be his least accessible film so far, but I think the fact that it had so much to take away from is the reason that it ended up resonating with so many people for so many different reasons. The original Japanese title and the better title comes in the form of a question: how do you live? And Miyazaki asks us a lot of questions with this film, and these are questions that we will be unpacking, answering, and pondering for years to come as we sit with this beautiful and triumphant potential swan song.
Oh my god! Oh my god! It's Spider-Man! It's Spider-Man!
The sequel to my favorite film of all time lived up to the impossible standards I had for it. The only thing stopping it from surpassing Into the Spider-Verse for me is the simple fact that it's a part 1, and I slightly prefer the origin story over this film's story. And the fact that that's the only reason it hasn't surpassed my favorite film of all time is really, really impressive. Oh boy, only 3 films in history have made me cry so hard that I got a headache, and those films are Grave of the Fireflies, Schindler's List, and now The Iron Claw. But this is more than an emotional ending. It's a masterfully directed film that features one of the best acting ensembles I've seen in a very long time, led by an absolutely staggering performance from Zac Efron. I thought his performance was going to be your typical Oscar bait based on my own preconceptions of the movie, but it ended up being a lot more reserved than I gave him credit for. He perfectly captures the suppressed trauma and sadness of a man carrying the weight of his whole family and put on an impossible pedestal. Combine that with Matthias Ertley's beautiful cinematography, Matthew Hannum's methodical editing, and an incredible soundtrack with my sleeper pick for Best Original Song.
Whose land is this? My land.
Before Killers of the Flower Moon came out, I watched every single Martin Scorsese film, and watching every Scorsese movie means watching one of the greatest films you've ever seen and going, yep, that's going number 15 on the ranking. So when I say that Killers of the Flower Moon is my 6th favorite Scorsese film, just know that is insanely high praise.
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
Trying to describe Poor Things is really difficult because no matter what you say about it, you will always feel like you're selling it short. I could spend all day talking about Robbie Ryan's creatively daring and inventive cinematography with his use of extreme wides and crazy lenses, but then I wouldn't want to forget to mention the gorgeous and rich production design by James Price and Shona Heath. And then of course I couldn't leave out Jerskin Fendrick's beautiful yet oh so weird score, but then of course there's the cast with career highs from Emma Stone, Mark Ruffalo, and Willem Dafoe. The marketing team chose the film's main selling point to be its inspirational story of self-discovery and proud weirdness, but then the marketing also forgot to mention just how funny the film is. The work Yorgos Lanthimos and his team put into Poor Things is not best described, but should simply be experienced. And much like Cowboy Bebop, this work will become a new genre itself and will be called Poor Things.
You said you washed your hands of me! No, I meant it metaphorically! Of course you meant it metaphorically! What were you gonna do, actually go and wash your hands?
Every review and conversation around The Holdovers is going to talk about how it not only authentically depicts the 70s, but feels like a movie made from that era. Everything from how the audio is mixed in mono, Nigel Brill's cinematography that might be digital but looks like film, the lived-in and incredibly detailed production design by Ryan Warren Smith, and Kevin Tent's methodical editing featuring a ton of dissolves. But this style is not here for the sake of nostalgia, but works to fully immerse you into this film, a film that I didn't want to leave, a film that feels like a long, tight hug that kinda hurts, and when you let go it leaves an impact, but ultimately feels so, so good.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
I mean, how could it be anything else? Christopher Nolan's screenplay and direction is his best so far. Jennifer Lane's editing is generational. Hoyt van Hoytema reached a career high with the cinematography. Ludwig Göransson's score is transcendent. The sound design is insane. The hair and makeup is so impressive. I bet the catering on set was delicious. And of course, the cast was absolutely incredible. I hope that Cillian Murphy wins that Oscar. And if it were up to me, the entire Best Supporting Acting category would go to Robert Downey Jr., Jason Clarke, Alden Ehrenreich, Benny Safdie, and David Krumholtz. Emily Blunt was amazing. Florence Pugh was amazing. Christopher Nolan really brought out the best work out of everyone on that set to make this generational masterpiece. This is a new staple of cinema history that belongs on the shelf next to Lawrence of Arabia, Ben-Hur, The Godfather, and 2001: A Space Odyssey.